Okay. All right, gentlemen, let's go. In page 340, Parshas Bo. Let's go. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes yesterday. Who was it? The Lior. I think you asked me about why is it called in Pasuk Beis. It says that, let's read Pasuk Beis again. L'man tesaper bozdei bincha uven bincha, es asher yisalalti b'mitzrayim v'sososai asher samti bam. Tell your children and your how I mocked the Egyptians and the signs. V'yadatem k'ani Hashem. So we spoke about yesterday about what it means to know and to tell your children and your grandchildren. What's the mockery over here? So there's a medrash that says that there's a guy who told his servant to go out and buy him a fish. The Medrash says he told his servant, go get me a fish. The master told the servant, go buy me a fish. So the servant buys the fish, and it's a rotten fish. Turns out the fish is rotten. So the master says to him, okay, you got three choices. You could either eat the fish, or I whip you 50 times, I think it's 50 times or 100 times or whatever, I forgot what the number was, or you pay a fine. So the guy thinks, none of the choices are great. It's, do I want a bungee jump or do I want a skydive? Neither of them is a great choice here. So he says, all right, I'll eat the fish. So he starts eating the fish, and halfway through he can't take it. He's eating a rotten fish. He says, halfway through I cannot take it. So he says, all right, never mind, you better whip me instead. So he starts whipping him, right? And halfway through, he can't take it. He says, oh, forget it, I'll pay the fine. So what happens to this clown? He ends up eating rotten fish and getting whipped, and in the end, he pays the fine anyway. So he says, that's the mockery of Egypt, because look what happens to Egypt. The first thing is they got hit, and in the end, they send out the Bnei Yisrael anyway, and the Bnei Yisrael take all their money. They clean the place out, right? So that's the mockery. The mockery is, listen, he could have just sent them out right away, and everything would have been fine. Instead, he ended up getting it in triplicate, right? And that's the mockery. That's the mockery that Hashem is showing. I made a mockery of not only I punished them, I made a mockery out of them, and that's what we have to tell over our children. And that's one of the ideas, is to tell it over to the children in a way that you want your children to absorb it, to live it. Friday night, I had a few of my grandchildren were over with their parents. So when we got to the makkah of, we do this at the Seder anyway. So everybody was assigned an animal. Everybody in the house is an animal. One's a dog, and one's a lion, and one's a cat. And then at the count of three, we got to make all the noises together. The zoo hits, there's barking, and the kids get into it. So the kids now I'm the elephant all the time, I think. I'm always the elephant. So the kids are, so that they hear all these animals together, they're all together, and it comes to life for them. I mean, that's part of what the Seder is. The Seder is trying to bring it to life for the kids, to bring it up. All the things, the symbolism of the moror and the thing is you're living it, you're absorbing it, and you're transmitting it to the children from generation to generation. So that's the mockery. Now, if you look at Parsha, let's go to the next page now. Take a look at Pasuk Tes. Pharaoh says to Moshe Rabbeinu after the plague of After the plague of he's warned about the locusts. So the men come to Pharaoh. The men say to Pharaoh, "Hey, listen, how long is this going to hit? Are we going to go on with this?" So Pharaoh calls them in, and at the bottom of the page, let's pick it up from there, bottom of the previous. Vayoshev es Moshe ves Aaron el Pharaoh. He brings back Moshe and Aaron. Vayomer aleim. Now listen to this exchange. Vayomer aleim lechu ivdu es Hashem. Go serve your God as Hashem lokechem. Miva mi aholchim. Who exactly is going? Vayomer Moshe bidarenu vizkanenu leilech, our young and our old, bivanenu v'nather, our sons and our daughters, and obviously the white women, because if the little children are going, well, the mother's got to be with them. Bitzonenu vivkarenu neilech, with our cattle, ki chag Hashem lanu. So Pharaoh says to Moshe Rabbeinu facetiously, oh, Hashem should be with you, as if I'm going to send you and your children. I see you've got evil intentions. Now Rashi here points out in Pasuk Yud it's Rashi says Ru'uki ra neged penechem. So Rashi says, second line on the right column. Umedrash Agoda Shamati. I heard a medrash. Kocha vechad yesh shmo Ra'ah. There's a star or a planet. The name is Ra'ah. Pharaoh said Ra'ah ki neged penechem. Literally, it means that you that you have evil intent. But the Medrash says that Pharaoh was saying that the star called Ra'ah is a Amar lehem Pharaoh. Roa ani b'itstagninus shali. I see in my constellations also kochav ola likraschem b'midbar. That star is going to rise opposite you. V'hu simon dom ve'ariga. That's a sign of blood and killing. And therefore, I'm not going to let you go. Lochein. I'm too concerned about your children. L'chuna hagvarim v'ivdu. The men should go serve. Kiyosa atem mevakshim. That's what you really want. Pharaoh chases them out. So the Medrash says, Pharaoh saying that, listen, I can't send out your children because, listen, there's a star that's going to come up, and this is, you got to be really tough to handle this negative energy that's coming down. Only the men could handle it. The kids you better not take with you. All of a sudden, this is the same guy who's either him or his father has been throwing children into a river and building them into buildings and killing Jewish babies. All of a sudden, he's concerned about the Jewish kid. No, this isn't good for you. Right? That just shows you the hypocrisy. That shows you the hypocrisy. And unfortunately, we live it. We live this in Israel today, where you have, unfortunately, the secular Jews, the secular government, certainly the left-wing government, that was trying to impose a certain curriculum into the religious schools. What they call the Liba studies, that the religious schools, they have to, because they've got it all worked out in their schools, everything is just, the kids come out so wonderful, and they have to search them for weapons and have metal detectors in their schools, and they have, drug abuse, and the teachers are afraid of the students and everything else, and they're worried about how we're raising our children. So for our good, and they've actually said it there, for your own good, we want you, because we have to prepare you, help the Haredis to be able to handle life better. So they're worried about us. They're not worried about us. It's unfortunate, and we're going to get them. They're all going to turn religious, right? We're not going to give up to lawyers. They're all going to be Shomer Shabbos. You're going to see the streets in Tel Aviv eventually being closed for traffic on Shabbos. We'll get them, right? We're optimists, yeah. But don't come along and tell me that you're doing me. But don't worry about me. I raise my children. You're so worried about I raise my children. You got problems of drug abuse, and you got abortions, and you got teen pregnancies. There's also teen pregnancies in the Haredi world, because the girls get married when they're 18, right? But that's about the only time that there's teen pregnancies in the Haredi world. In the Hasidic world, they get married when they're 16. It's not. Don't worry about us. Don't worry. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. By the way, we handle this is extremely important. The relationship with the secular Jews is we object to the ideals, not to the people. If you saw a secular Jew with a flat tire on the highway, you get out and you help him. And you invite him to your house for Shabbos. Whether the ideals, and certainly when they're anti-religious, that we're opposed to. Listen, we can't let you go and try to block us off. You can't, and we're certainly not in favor of doing things that are going to provoke and antagonize them. That is not our approach. Our approach is, as you see yourselves, our approach is to educate them. And we reach out to them, and you're more than welcome. We're willing. Gentlemen, I will go to any secular kibbutz in the country that you could get me to. And I'll speak in any secular kibbutz in the country. Right? Good luck getting me there, by the way. Right? Good luck getting me there. It doesn't work that often. They talk. Oh yeah, dialogue this, dialogue that. Until, okay, I'll come and dialogue with you. Right? No. That they're not. They're at that point, they're a little nervous about that. Do you know that there was once a program? I was actually, when I was a student here, we went to play a basketball game against the Israeli Air Force. Took a group of us from Ohr Somayach, and we went to play a basketball game against the Israeli Air Force, because there had been a program where they were going on to, there was actually, because there was like, I guess they had their Jewish education, and one of the Israeli Air Force pilots who became a Baal Tshuva, and he was an American guy, was an Israeli, Paul Laster, became became a Talmid Chacham, and he was here. So he was the liaison between the Ohr Somayach and the yeshiva and the Air Force. And at a certain point, we went to play a basketball game against the Israeli Air Force. I was learning in the base medrash, and Rabbi Wiener, he was also a student here at the time, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, they need a group of guys. We're taking 5 or 6 guys to go play a basketball game against the Israeli Air Force. Do I want to come? And now it was hard to rip myself away from Baba Kama. I mean, but for the good of the cause, It was very, very interesting. We had to take passports. To get onto an Israeli Air Force base. With security, clear security, that sort of thing. And they drove us in a Jeep to they brought an Israeli vehicle. They drove us. That was really exciting. And the goal was to show them that we can not only top them in the spiritual realm, we could top them in the physical realm as well. Right, yeah. You guys got schooled. We lost. It was a rough game. It was rough. We were American finesse ball players. They were Israelis. It was what I would call tackle basketball. It's the only time in my life I got fouled shooting a free throw. It was a rough game, but they were impressed. And I want to tell you something. I met a guy. There was a guy after the game. We had a guy, this is fascinating, we had a guy after the game, the base commander. Now you're talking about the commander of an Israeli Air Force base. I met this guy over 40 years ago for 15 minutes, and I still remember what the guy looked like. And he spoke to us for 15 minutes. He was so impressive. He was this rare combination of confidence, humility, and arrogance all rolled into one. Right? And I mean, which is what you want for a guy who's teaching other guys how to fly F-15s. And he told us something fascinating, which I've used as a muster vort many times. He told us that a pilot flying over the horizon, over the ocean, or the sea or the ocean, at a certain point, when you're at twice the speed of sound, they experience something called vertigo. And what happens is you lose all sense of direction and what do you call it? So if you're over the water in the blue sky, you don't know which way is up and down. And the pilots are trained. So sometimes what they have is they have another pilot that they can make they call another pilot and ask him, what am I supposed to do? Which way am I going, up or down? So you have another guy behind you who's telling you, no, take it up or take it down based on where you are. But if that, in the absence of that possibility, they train them. They have what's it called, the panel in front of them, and on the panel there's an indicator. And the pilots are trained to put blind faith into the indicator. And no matter what you think, you have to go with the indicator. And if you go with your instincts as opposed to the indicator, and the indicator says up, and you say what's up is down, you crash a plane at a couple hundred, 1,500 miles an hour, it's not good. So they're trained to put blind faith into this indicator. So on the way back, we were talking about that as a metaphor for life. That you have many people who are hurtling through life at twice the speed of sound with no real sense of direction, no up or down, no right or wrong, and they're just you don't even know how to make decisions in life. And there's one group of people that's got an indicator, which is a Torah Jew has an indicator that tells you what's right and what's wrong. And if you don't follow the indicator, you end up crashing yourself. Right? So eventually they stopped the program. They stopped the program because they found that there was too much one-way traffic from the Air Force to the yeshiva. Right? They too many, and it cost them a lot of money to train pilots. Right? So they had to stop the program because too many pilots were leaving the Air Force to become Baal Tshuvas, Chas v'Shalom. So they had to put a stop. They had to put a stop to the program. It wasn't stopped on our end. That's why I'm telling you, the community. We're willing to communicate with everybody. We're willing to communicate with everybody. The question is, they always talk about, open dialogue, this and that. I go, well, here we are. Well, here we are. We did have one group. One time we had a group of secular kids who, from a kibbutz, they came here one day a year. This was part of their Hebrew Judaic studies program, was 1 hour a year at yeshiva. They brought these kids, and American kids who were on a kibbutz for the year, they brought them into the yeshiva. I'd speak to these kids for 1 hour a year. And then for me, they went straight to Anat Hoffman, who is the head of Women of the Wall, right? The Women of the Wall, feminists, what do you call it? So they're going straight from me to Anat Hoffman. So I used to, I felt that, look, I got 1 hour a year for these kids. They've got 1 hour a year to be exposed to something authentic. So I hit them with everything I got, figuring maybe I'll plant some seeds, and also I try to preempt Anat Hoffman, before who knows what she told them. So I would go and meet with Anat Hoffman, no problem. Anat, if you're listening, you want to bring it on. I'll meet you anywhere you want. We could talk it out. I'll go. I have no problem. But but they have to be willing. They have to be willing. They have to be willing to hear the truth sometimes. Now look at the next pasuk. So that's the hypocrisy of Pharaoh. And then he says, Lo chen, luchuna hagvarim, fourth line on the page, on 342. No, let the men go, v'ivdu es Hashem, ki osa ata mivakshim. That's really what you want. Ve'garsh osa me'es p'nei Pharaoh. Now, the question here is, what's Pharaoh's deal over here? I don't want everybody to leave, only the men. So at one level, Pharaoh's nervous. Listen, if I let everybody go, who knows if you're coming back? On the other hand, if you leave your women and children over here, so then I know you're going to be coming back. And what's interesting is the Russians used to do that when they would release even diplomats. They let them go to another country back in the time of the Iron Curtain. They let the diplomats go, but don't just remember, you're not taking your family with. Right? We want to see you back here, right? And the only way we know that you're going to be back here is that we know your family is here. So they did make it. They made an offer. As the mafia used to make an offer they couldn't refuse. You're going to be back, and we'll see you back here. What's really bothering Pharaoh? Okay, so that's one idea. But several commentaries say the following: in other religions, especially the Catholics, the priests are detached from the entire physical world. They don't get married. They don't drink. They don't indulge in this, that, or the other. I mean, I'm talking about according to the official rules, right? But according to the official rules, why? Because in their mind, you know what? Let's back up a second. I'll tell you a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says 3 people that sit at a table and they eat, and they don't exchange a word of Torah at the table, is ki'ilu achlu mizivchei mesim. It's as if they ate from offerings, pagan offerings. 3 people sat at a table and you didn't say a word of Torah. It's as if they ate pagan offerings. Now, you've all heard the idea that you should say a Dvar Torah at the table, right? Right? So they say the Vilna Gaon was once sitting at a table and some of his disciples were sitting at the next table. And one of them said, we have to say a Dvar Torah at the table. And the Vilna Gaon turned to them and said, you just fulfilled your obligation. You just fulfilled your obligation. That itself is a Dvar Torah. So, sometimes people say, well, Dvar Torah at the table, and everybody gets ready for a speech. It doesn't have to be. All you have to say is that you have to say Kriya Shema by a certain time every day. That's a piece of Torah. That's a Dvar Torah. Don't talk after you wash your hands. And by the way, contrary to popular belief, if you did talk after you wash your hands, you don't have to wash again. You don't have to wash again. If you touch your shoes or something, you have to wash again. But if you talk, you don't have to wash again. What do you call it? And sometimes you're sitting at a table, everybody's washed, then you get one of these, husband and wife go, no. And there's, by the way, a language husband and wife even understand each other sometimes. Sometimes they understand each other better that way than the other way. So then when they're talking clearly, that was much clearer. Then we got to the point much clearer. But sometimes you're just better off by saying, please, bring the salt. And it takes 20 minutes. The whole point is not to make a break between washing your hands. I used to say when my kids were younger, they're sitting at the table and I've washed them, getting ready for Kiddush, and 2 of the kids are goofing around. I would say, cut it out, guys. It had a double effect. Number one, they understood clearly what I want. And number 2, there's a little bit of the shock that he spoke after washing his hands. But it's perfectly permissible as long as I know I'm not touching anything. And it gets to the point quicker, and now we're ready to make the bracha. So, I'll get to you 1 second. So the Mishnah says 3 people are saying, it doesn't have to be a speech, it just has to be a Dvar Torah, anything of Torah. So the Mishnah says 3 people are sitting at a table, and they didn't say a Dvar Torah, it's as if they ate from pagan offerings. Why? Number 1, why 3 people, not 2 people? If 2 people sit at a table, why is it 3 people that sit at a table? Why not 2 people? So the commentaries explain, two people could be sitting at a table. You're not having a meal together. You're both in a rush. You just happen to be sat down with your wife. Or you got to get to work. Your wife's got to get to work. You happen to sit down and have a cup of coffee and a bowl of cereal. You're not having a meal. You just got to eat. You're in a rush. It's not chit chat time. Three people sit together. That's generally, a more relaxed environment. Now, if you're in a relaxed environment and you're eating a meal and you didn't say Torah, so what you're really doing is you're making a declaration. What you're saying is that the physical pursuit of eating has nothing to do with religion. It's a separate realm from religion, which is exactly what many pagan societies believed. The priests are separate, the priests don't get married, the priests don't indulge in the various pleasures of life because they're the religious ones. Everybody else could run around doing whatever they want to do. The priests, they're in a separate, they are the religion, is the priests. Everybody else, when do you have any contact with the priest? Once in a while, you go to church, especially if you're very bad that week and you say a few confessions, then he gives you a few Hail Marys, then you go do what you want the next week again, right? Then show up again. But it has nothing to do with the physical. Judaism says the opposite. This is also part of our religion. Going to sleep at night is a religious pursuit. All you have to do is think when you go to sleep. Think once when you go to sleep. The next 7 hours is to strengthen myself in order that I can serve Hashem the next day with a clear head and a healthy body. Then you had 7 hours of serving God. You sit down at a table on Shabbos, you've seen that a Shabbos table is very much a form of serving God, right? Even your fourth helping of chalt, right? That's very much a way of serving God. That means that the physical, we believe that the physical and the spiritual are connected. If you sit down at a meal and don't say a Dvar Torah, that's considered like eating pagan offerings because you're buying into the pagan ideals. You're telling me this is what do they call it? Separation of church and plate. Right? Separation of church and plate. The two are not connected. There's no connection between it. And the Torah says, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. Eating is also a form of serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if you play tennis because you need to be healthy, that's also a form of serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And if your children are involved, that's also a form of serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. For a Pharaoh, Moshe Rabbeinu says, who's going? He says, all of us, men and women, young and old, children, get it. What's that got to do with religion? What are you going to do with your children making noise and a ruckus in the background? How are you going to bench and how are you going to daven with the kid in there? No, you're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. That's part of our Yiddishkeit. I once asked my father, Olav Shalom, years ago, I asked my father, the Torah talks to every Jew. And the Torah says you have to do this, you have to do that, you have that. I said, who is it talking to? What stage of life is it talking to us? Is it talking to us when our kids are teenagers? Is it telling us when our kids are little and we got to chase them around? Is it talking about when they're out of the home? Right? Where's the Torah talk? He said, they're talking to you at every stage of life. Because at every stage of life, and you have to draw the balance. You have to be a frum Jew when your kids are young. And if it means staying home from shul because your wife needs help, so that's part of your avodas Hashem. And you have to be a frum Jew when your kids are teenagers, if it means going down to bail them out of prison, right? So that's that stage of life. And if you're Jew, as my father did for me, and if it means that you're what? I'm not kidding. My father once had to bail me out when I got arrested for jaywalking with a couple of my friends. My father had come down to prison and bail us out. Right? Got arrested for jaywalking. Right? That's what he got arrested for. And if it means what? If it means when your kids are out of the house and your grandchildren are there, turning your house into what Hiroshima looked like after the bomb, right? That's also part of avodas Hashem. That's at every stage of life. Pharaoh can't understand that. I don't know if you guys ever daven in a Hasidic shul on Shabbos. Right? You ever daven with the Hasidim on Shabbos? What does it look like with the kids? Kids are all over the place, right? The kids are all over the place. Right? And if you say shh to the kids, somebody has to go, shh, what are you shushing the kids for? That's all part of it. Okay, so in the Litvish shuls, the kids are, and ideally, but by the Chassidim, that's how they do it. That's their approach. That's all avodas Hashem. The women are there, the children are there. That's what Pharaoh can't understand. Pharaoh can't possibly understand. What has this got to do with serving God? Our priests go into their temple and their shrine, and they're not married, and there are no children, and there are no grandchildren. They're the religious ones. The Torah says, no. We're all religious. And this is all part of the religion. Somebody had a question. You had a question again. Before, we were talking about the washing, I think. What's your name? Natan. What were we going to ask? Okay.
So basically, when you wash, right?
Right.
Aren't you supposed to say, like, if you speak after you wash, like, I get it, you're not supposed to wash, but aren't you supposed to, like, say something because you said?
No. That's if you make a bracha levatola. They say Baruch Shem Kavod Balchus Olam Vad. That's if it's an unnecessary bracha. For example, I made a bracha shakol. If I forget and I say, oh, Baruch Hashem shakol nevero, so then I say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam Vad. Once I wash, it's just a goal of making sure my hands don't touch anything that ruins the washing. If my hands are in full view, so our minhag is to say nu, to try to avoid it. But sometimes if the new gets to get, if they finally get to what's new, just say what you have to say. That's something you are allowed to say. Lechatchila, please bring the salt. Please bring the challah knife. Yeah.
So Pharaoh's initial anxiety going way back about the Jewish people was of their potential, right? What threat they could pose to Mitzrayim.
Good.
Now that he knows that Hashem is true, and he says, so be Hashem with you, right? He acknowledges Hashem's power. He's seen the plagues. Why is he still trying to chop up the Jewish people's potential? Now that he knows Hashem is in the picture.
Good question. Mm-hmm. At this point, after the fifth plague, Pharaoh's heart has been hardened. Now, let's understand what it means his heart has been hardened. Most people understand, and there is an approach like that, but it's not the standard approach. It's what people think is the standard approach, is that Pharaoh does not have free choice anymore. Pharaoh does not have free choice anymore. And that's not what it means. That's not what it means, according to most. What it means that his heart is hardened, the example that I gave you is, imagine imagine a cobra would come climbing through that window right now. Okay? Do I have free choice to remain in my seat?
No.
I don't?
Knowing you.
Knowing me. Okay, good. Yeah. Well, and you would, huh? But you're right. Knowing me, I still have free choice. There's nothing forcing me out of the seat. The smart bet, the odds out of Vegas are at least 5-2. That as soon as I even think that a cobra is coming through the window, I'd be out that door so fast whether the door opens or doesn't. Right? Or I'd be out the other window. That's true. Do I have free choice though?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just use numbers. It's a 99-1 free choice. 99% chance that I'm out of here. 1% chance that I'll stay in my seat. Pharaoh's hardening of his heart is that in an area that for your average person would be 99-1, for Pharaoh it remained 50-50. That's what it means hardened heart. He's still got free choice, but it's a 50-50. That means it's a 50-50. That's of course. So according to some, he doesn't have any choice at all. You blew it. You had a free choice up until this point. You blew it, and at this point, your free choice is taken away. So Pharaoh is now, to answer your question, he's grasping at anything he can because his heart has been hardened. And that's why he wants to keep the Jewish people. And even any rational person, you see even his men are saying, hey, how long are they going to be a snare for us? How long is this going to go on for? And even so, Pharaoh still gives them a hard time. Okay. The locust comes, and if you take a look, Vayomer Hashem, Pasuk Yud Beis. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Netei Yadcha al Eretz Mitzrayim ba'arbeh. Now, this idea of ba'arbeh, by the way, if you look at ba'arbeh, it is, why is it literally on arbeh, right? It should be Neteyas Yodcha al Eretz Mitzrayim v'ya'al arbeh, v'ya'al al Eretz Mitzrayim. Ba'arbeh, according to some, means on the word arbeh. That means on Moshe's staff, he had the names of the 10 plagues. And Hashem is saying, put your hand, push the arbeh button now on the staff. Down arbeh, right? And according to some, that was actually engraved on the staff. The words of the plagues were engraved. Okay, now move it to this one. Doink, you activated that missile. Yeah, the arbeh missile. Now, you'll notice that the word arbeh is related to the Hebrew word harbeh. Harbeh, which is a lot, right? Because in locusts, they come, I think they come in the billions, right? The locusts come in the billions. And it's a devastating plague because the arbeh is going to come when locusts come. That's the farmer's dread fear, right? The farmer's dread fear is the locust. I once saw a movie with Ronnie Howard. Remember Ronnie Howard was Richie, was what do you call it? Richie was Happy Days, and he was, what do you call it? So Ronnie Howard became a movie director. So in this movie, he gets a dishonorable discharge from the Army. And no one's happy. He lives in this small town. Nobody's happy to see him. They're some farm town. And all of a sudden there's this locust threat. And he gets into the plane, and he drives his plane right into the locusts. Right, that scatters them. That saves everybody. He becomes the hero. Right? But he drives the plane. Locust is devastating. Locust is the most devastating plague of anything. Now, if you take a look in Pasuk Chavav, Pharaoh calls them back in. If Pasuk 25, 26. Okay, and this starts with the plague of darkness. And on the top of page 344. Now, of all, by the way, I just want to go back for a second. We were talking about serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we serve with the women and with the children and everything else. It's not only the women and the children. This is an important point. We serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu under all circumstances. That means that the standard approach is, you got to, whatever the religion is, you happen to go when you feel like going. In Judaism, it's a 24-hour job. It's a 24-hour day job. And the Rambam says, when it comes to the mitzvah of learning Torah, everybody's obligated to learn Torah. The Rambam says whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're physically healthy, whether you're suffering. The fact that a person is suffering, the fact that a person is going through an ordeal doesn't exempt you. Okay, there are certain times where it's a life-threatening situation. But even under difficult circumstances, it could be that your family members are giving you a hard time, that you fell into a cult, into some religious cult, and they're giving you a hard time. And it could be that you're, what do you call it, that it may cost you money. Now you got to close because your business that you're running is not a kosher business. You can't sell non-kosher food. You have to close a treif restaurant, or you have the ability to take on a certain job. And now you have I had a guy once. There was a guy who was a broadcaster. This guy studied broadcasting in college, became Hasidish. He became Hasidish Baal Tshuva, and he was a great broadcaster. And he walked into Israel, Israel radio, off the street, and he just said, "I'd like to be a broadcaster." And they gave him an audition. And he was better than all the other. He became the main broadcaster for the English news on the Israeli on Kol Yisrael. He would broadcast there on Kol Yisrael. He was the main English broadcaster, and he told me that there's a problem when you're broadcasting news because it involves lashon hara. Most of, especially Israeli news, is generally they're not saying, "Oh yeah, well we have a few tzaddikim today who did chesed." That's generally not what you hear about. You're saying, it's one thing if it's American news and you're talking about non-Jews. So even if there's a permissibility, here you're talking about Jews. Jewish politicians and Jewish this and Jewish that. It's never very good. That's why it's so popular. So so he told me that he asked Rav Sheinberg Zatzal if he's allowed to do it. Is he allowed to read off the news? Because it's going to involve some. So Rav Sheinberg was interesting. He told me he asked Rav Sheinberg, and Rav Sheinberg told him since it's going to be done anyway, and the guy who broadcasts has a certain amount of input. Most of it is the news editor tells you what to read off. But the broadcaster does have a certain amount of input, so then Rav Sheinberg told him that he's allowed to do it because if anything, he'll be able to reduce what would be to be done anyway. Okay, but you have to ask a shayla. It's not always permissible. Let's say you're a great cook and you want to cook for you went to culinary school. You want to cook for some fancy restaurant, but it's a non-kosher restaurant. You've got all sorts of halachic problems. I don't want to just cook for Bubby Bernstein's bagel shop. I want to do something a little more sophisticated, not the usual Jewish restaurant, which always ends up with roast chicken and potatoes. I want to do something a little more sophisticated, a little more upgraded. There are problems. Sometimes you couldn't, sometimes you can't. But you have to ask your shayla. So it's serving. It means serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember, I told you a story about the guy with the baggage compartment. There's a guy going from Tel Aviv. He had to go from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim. So he had a suitcase. So he was taking a bus from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim. So he asked the bus driver to open up the baggage compartment. So he tried putting in a suitcase and he couldn't fit in. So he started pushing the suitcases, but he couldn't get enough leverage. So what did he do? He got into the baggage compartment and he moved the suitcases around to make more room. Now, this is Israel, so guess what happened? Of course, the bus driver's view was blocked, and he pushed a button and he locked him in, and he drove from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim with this guy in the baggage compartment. I know 3 cases when this has happened. I know 3 situations like this. He drove from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim with the guy in the baggage compartment. I say he got banged around a little bit, but he was okay. And then when he got out of the baggage compartment, he called a Rav to ask a Shaila. What was his Shaila? I would have called a lawyer. A lawsuit city, right? He called a Rav. Does he have to pay? Does he have to pay for the ride? Right? In Israel, they used to have a rule, by the way, that on intercity buses, that if you have a seat, you pay full fare, and if you end up standing, you only pay half fare. So now maybe if you're lying down, you pay 3/4. You know, I don't know. So the guy called a Rav. You understand? Now, yeah, who in their right mind would do such a thing? And by the way, what do you think the answer was?
No. Not to pay.
Why?
Because it's not a seat.
Because it's not a seat. You need a better svara than that. But you got to be a Yerushalayim. Why shouldn't you pay?
Negligence.
But you got there.
They should be giving him money.
Oh, so that's the closest one so far. The Rav said, if asked in advance, most normal people, which means beyond the age of 19, right? Most normal people would decline a free ride in the baggage compartment. If you'd ask me in advance, look, I'll take you for free as long as you're in the baggage, I would say, I'll wait, I'll wait, right? People under the age of 19 would probably pay for the privilege. They could charge, a teenager would pay double to get into the baggage compartment. I know of 3 cases like this. I know one case was also in Bnei Brak where the mother, where the mother had like twin babies, and she asked 2 seminary girls to watch the babies, and she got into the baggage compartment, and the next thing you know, he closes and starts, and people are screaming at him, hey, you're kidnapping the mother over there. You got these kids are watching her 2 babies on the sidewalk, and these seminary girls. Then I heard about one case of one girl, like a teenage girl, who was actually, got caught in the baggage compartment and went on a bus, I think it was from Haifa to Yerushalayim, but she had a cell phone with her. So she called her parents from the baggage compartment. That's one of those, Mom, Dad, everything's okay, but I'm in the baggage compartment of a 961 from Haifa to Tel Aviv. So they called the police, and the police stopped the bus in the middle of the highway. Now, I wasn't there, but I've been in Israel long enough. I could see exactly how this played out. I could see it without even being, I'm sure the police called the bus driver and says, Yesh bachura bagage. Right? And I could see him, lo yachol liyot, arguing for 10 minutes first. I could see that happening, right? Can you imagine the guy, tiftach et bagage, lo yachol liyot. And finally, tiftach et bagage. He opens it up and she comes crawling out. And I can see the bus driver looking at her. Ma dosa shama, ma dosa shama. I'm sure without even being there, you know that's how it works. So the point is that it goes with you everywhere you go. It's with you everywhere you go. The religion doesn't stop with the priests. It's with us 24 hours a day. It could be on an airplane where all of a sudden you have to find out. They give you a meal, and you have to ask, is it a kosher meal or not? Or they have a hechsher. Whose hechsher is this? Is this a reliable hechsher? There's another guy got into a cab here in Israel, and he asked the cab driver to take him somewhere in the south, a tourist. And they're in the south, it's a hot day, and he asked the cab driver, documented the incident. He asked the cab driver to stop because he wants to go into a kiosk to get a Coke. So he goes into this kiosk to get a Coke, and he brings one out for the cab driver also. Very nice of him. Cab driver drinks his Coke. 20 minutes later, he finds himself at the side of the road. The guy had drugged his Coke, took his wallet, took his, left the cab driver at the side of the road. So the cab driver then called the Rav to ask a shaila. What was his shaila? What was his shaila, Ezra? He had a shaila.
If he was a bracha lebetorah?
Oh, close. Does he make an after bracha on the Coke? Because had he known it was drugged, he wouldn't have drunk it. That was his shaila. How do you like that? The first thing he's thinking about. I think about it. The wallet is missing and everything. His cab's on it. And in the meantime, he wants to know about making an after bracha. Because had he known, so what do you think the psak was? You have to make an after bracha. Why? Because half the things that we eat, if we knew what the effects would be, we would never have eaten them. You know, they have these the Doritos with a picture of the devil and a pitchfork or something on there. You know these Doritos they eat, and then at 2 a.m. there's a volcanic explosion in your chest. You know, from the what do you call it? Or the chont that you ate, or some Chinese food that you know. I know you eat the Chinese food. Next thing you know, your ears are burning. You know, and you can't sleep at night because half the things we eat, if we knew the effect, we wouldn't have eaten them. And then you never make an after bracha. Right? No. You have to make the after bracha. What are you, a lunatic? What, you kind of fanatic are you? That's what's on your mind. Do you know there was a Rav in Israel named Rav Shrei Dublitsky? Rav Shrei Dublitsky was lived there a couple of years ago. Massive Talmud Chacham, a Kabbalist. He was walking on Yontif. He was carrying a candle on Yontif. And on Yontif, you're allowed to carry a candle. And the burning wick somehow fell onto his hand. Now, what would your reaction be? What's the first reaction if a wick falls onto your hand? Like that. You know what he did? He grabbed his hand so he shouldn't move. Because he was worried if he does like that, he's going to extinguish the wick. Right? Right? That's the you know, the religion. Now, it wasn't people. Oh, but you got to listen. You're not going to die from a wick burning you a little bit. It's not pikuach nefesh. You know. Look out! I might get set on fire. You know yeah. But it's that's what's on your mind. I'll tell you one more. There was a big, tremendous Talmud Chacham named Rabbi Dovid Baharan. He lived around the turn of the century, 19th century. So he was in the old Yerushalayim, one of these, these people that are poor as mice. So he used to sit in a shul and learn all day. And his daughter would bring him, she'd bring him his meager meal, a piece of bread, with some milk. And in the winter, they had these kerosene heaters. And she bought him a bottle of kerosene. And he would sit and learn all day, mamish, completely. So one day his daughter comes, she brings him the meal. And she comes back an hour later to get the dishes in the shul. And he's sitting on the floor, and his daughter says, "Daddy, you didn't drink your milk." So I drank my milk. You didn't drink your milk. So I'm in the middle of learning. I tell you, I drank the milk. She says, "Daddy, you didn't drink the milk." And he looks up, and sure enough, he didn't drink the milk. And he realized that he was so immersed in the learning, instead of drinking the milk, he drank the kerosene. Now, what would your reaction be? What would your reaction be? My reaction would be, nobody light a match around me. Right? That would be my reaction. What was his reaction? His reaction is, "Oi! I made a bracha levatala," because he made a shahakol on the milk and he drank the kerosene instead. That was his concern. You understand? Yeah, Jonathan, don't drink any kerosene. But but that was be careful when it's milk. Make sure it's milk, not kerosene. But you understand that a person who is really focused. So that's what we have. You have the same person in the when you get out of a cab and you pay a cab driver. You could pay the cab driver. You could also have in mind, I'm fulfilling the Torah mitzvah that you have to pay an employee on the day that he does a service for you. Biyomo titei tzcharo. You just elevated it to a different thing. It's everywhere we go. When you're doing the dishes for your wife, you can do the dishes because I just got to get her off my back already. Or you can do it because I'm doing a mitzvah of chesed. I'm going to help my wife. Okay, we're the science fiction here, but I'm just telling you, you could do that, but it goes with you. That's what a Pharaoh can't understand. Question, yeah, what are we going to ask?
What's the opposite of having your heart hardened?
Good question. The opposite of having your heart hardened is what we call siyata d'shmaya. You've earned the privilege of Hashem helping you in the direction that you want to go. I want you to ask me this tomorrow. I want to speak about this tomorrow. First question, ask me about this tomorrow. Okay? A very important question you're asking.